The dead sun bowl had burned every low-born hand that dared to lift it. That was why the Dragon Court ordered Mara Vey to carry it. They did not call it execution. The court never used honest words when beautiful ones could make cruelty sound ancient. They called it a purity rite, a witness offering, a cleansing of suspected servant blood before the royal feast. Mara knew better. She stood barefoot in the center of the Sun Court, with both wrists wrapped in black linen, not because she was injured, but because Lord Regent Veyron did not want ash falling onto the marble before the nobles had gathered close enough to see. The hall was circular, built beneath a golden dome painted with dragons devouring eclipses. Sunlight entered through high, narrow windows and struck the black stone altar at the center, where the dead sun bowl waited. It was small enough to be carried in 2 hands. That made it worse. A relic large enough to crush a person could be feared honestly. But the bowl looked almost harmless from a distance. Black, smooth, round, carved from dead star, stone, and rimmed in dull gold. No flame rose from it. No smoke curled above it. It simply sat in silence, as if it had already decided who deserved to survive. Mara had polished the Sun Court floors for 5 years. She knew where the gold tiles were cracked. She knew which dragon statues leaked rain during storms. She knew which nobles stepped around servants as if touching one might stain their lineage. She also knew the old stories whispered below stairs. The dead sun bowl was not made to test servants. It was made to remember murder. That was why the servants feared it more than the nobles did. Lord Regent Veyron stood beside the altar, in white ceremonial robes stitched with gold thread. He was Dragon King Aurelian's uncle, the guardian of old court law, and the man everyone thanked for keeping the kingdom stable after the royal nursery fire 17 years ago. His face was handsome in the cold way of carved ivory, his silver hair tied neatly at his nape, his smile patient enough to frighten anyone who had ever been beneath his notice. "Mara Vey," he announced, his voice carrying through the dome. "Kitchen servant of the lower western wing, accused of carrying Sunai corruption, stealing ashes from the dead temple vault, and touching a relic forbidden to low blood." Mara lifted her head. "I touched no relic," the nobles murmured, offended less by the accusation than by the fact that she answered it. Veyron smiled. "Then the bowl will absolve you." No one in the court laughed. They did not need to. Everyone knew what absolution meant for a servant girl. 3 nights ago, Mara had been sent to clean the old temple vault below the palace after a pipe burst during rain. She had not gone there by choice. No servant did. The vault held broken relics from the Sun Temple, sealed after the royal nursery fire and blamed on temple rebels who supposedly tried to overthrow the bloodline. Mara's mother had been one of those rebels, according to the court. Mara had been too when they dragged her from the servant nursery and branded her file with a black sun mark. Not on her skin. Worse, on paper, a skin brand could heal ugly. A record brand followed a girl into every room before she entered. Daughter of Sunai traitor, unfit for flame service, permitted only in water, ash, and kitchen labor. She had spent her life carrying trays past people who believed her mother's blood had murdered a royal child. But in the vault, beneath broken tiles and rotted prayer cloth, Mara had found a strip of gold linen no water had touched. It bore a nursery seal, not the servant temple mark, the royal dragon mark. Wrapped inside it was a tiny black bead, shaped like an eye. When Mara picked it up, it opened, just once. Golden light looked at her. Then the guards arrived. Now Dragon King Aurelian Kyle sat on the sun throne at the far end of the court. He wore black gold armor shaped like dragon scales, a dark cloak clasped with a ruby sun, and a narrow crown that seemed too bright for the shadows beneath his eyes. He was young, feared, and beautiful in the dangerous way of a blade left in sunlight. His face revealed little, but Mara had served near enough to court dinners to notice what others ignored. His crown flickered whenever Veyron spoke, not visibly to everyone, only a faint dimming at the edges, as if the gold did not like hearing the regent's voice. Aurelian watched Mara now with unreadable amber eyes. Not pity, not trust. Attention, that was almost worse. Why were you in the temple vault? He asked. Veyron turned slightly. Your Majesty, the charge has already been read. I asked her. The silence sharpened. Mara swallowed. A pipe burst. Steward Corrin sent me to clear the water. Who reported you? Veyron's fingers rested on the altar. The guard captain found her holding temple contraband. Aurelian's gaze moved to the bowl. And the contraband? Consumed by protective flame, Veyron said smoothly. Mara stared at him. That was a lie. The black bead had not burned. She had seen Veyron take it from the guard himself, closing his fist before anyone else could look. Aurelian saw her stare. His eyes narrowed. Veyron lifted one hand. Bring the bowl. 2 priests approached the altar, but did not touch the relic directly. They used hooked golden rods to lift it by the rim and carry it toward Mara, holding it at a careful distance. Cowards, she thought, then hated herself for thinking anything at all while her legs trembled. The bowl stopped before her. The court leaned closer. Veyron's voice softened. Carry it to the king. If your blood is innocent, it will remain cool. If your blood carries the dead temple's guilt, your hands will burn before the throne. Mara looked at Aurelian. For one strange breath, she thought he might stop it. His fingers tightened on the armrest. The crown on his brow flickered again. Veyron turned his head slightly toward him, and the king's hand stilled. Mara understood then. He was not stopping it, whether he chose not to or could not. The result was the same. She lifted her hands. The priests placed the dead sun bowl into her palms. Cold. It was cold. Not burning. Not warm. Cold as buried stone. A murmur passed through the court. Mara took one step toward the throne, then another. The black bowl trembled. Gold light opened inside its center. Veyron went still. The bowl did not burn Mara's hands. It opened. A slit of golden fire split across the black stone, widening into a giant dragon eye that stared upward from the bowl in her palms. Every torch in the sun court bent toward it. Every gold tile darkened. The painted dragons on the dome seemed to turn their heads. The eye did not look at Mara. It looked past her, straight at Lord Regent Veyron. Aurelian rose from the throne. The crown on his brow flared bright, then dimmed like a dying sun. The dead sun bowl spoke in a voice older than the court. Murder relic awakened. Mara could not move. The golden dragon eye widened. Inside its pupil, a memory began to form. A royal nursery burning under black sunlight, a child's cradle overturned, and Veyron standing in the flames with blood on his sleeve. Then the bowl spoke again. Son, eyewitness present. The entire court turned toward Mara, but Aurelian was no longer looking at her. He was looking at his uncle. The silence that followed did not feel like innocence. It felt like every noble in the Sun Court had suddenly remembered there were doors behind them. Mara stood halfway between the altar and the sun throne. The dead sun bowl balanced in her hands, its golden dragon eye open and burning, with a light that did not warm her skin. It watched Lord Regent Veyron with the patience of something that had waited 17 years beneath dust, lies, and court law. Veyron did not step back. That frightened Mara more than panic would have. A guilty man startled by truth might flinch. A practiced man measured it. The regent's face paled only slightly before his calm returned, smooth as wax poured over a knife. The relic has awakened under contamination, he said. No one is to look into the eye. Dulat. Half the court had already seen the memory inside the bowl's pupil. The royal nursery burning under black sunlight, a cradle overturned, Veyron standing in the flames with blood on his sleeve. Dragon King Aurelian remained standing before the sun throne. His crown flickered again, brighter this time, then dimmer. Mara saw his fingers curl against the armrest before he released it and stepped down one stair. The bowl's eye shifted, not away from Veyron, but wider, as if it had noticed the king moving closer to the truth. Aurelian's voice was low. "What did it mean by murder, relic?" Veyron turned toward him. "Your Majesty, old temple relics often speak in symbolic accusation. The Sun Eye cult used confession magic to turn grief against royal blood. That is why they were sealed." Mara's hands tightened under the bowl. Cult. That was the word the court used for her mother's people. Sun Eye traitors, ash singers, murder priests, servants with delusions of sacred sight. But the bowl did not burn her. It had named her witness. Aurelian descended another step. The gold at his crown blackened along the rim. He winced. "Barely," Veyron noticed. "Majesty, do not approach the relic." "Why? It has already shown one false memory." The dead sun bowl answered. The golden eye blinked. The entire court gasped as the pupil opened into flame again. This time, the memory sharpened. The royal nursery appeared above the bowl in a ring of gold light, not as smoke and confusion, but as a clear chamber with moon-white walls, cradle curtains embroidered with suns, and a baby's soft cry coming from behind a carved screen. Mara's breath caught. A young woman in temple robes stood near the cradle, not attacking it, shielding it. Her dark hair had fallen loose from its pins. Blood marked her cheek. In her arms was a bundle wrapped in royal gold linen. Mara knew her before the memory named her. Her mother, Mara Vey. The name did not come from Mara. It came from the bowl. Son, eyewitness, Mara Vey. Accused traitor, last living holder of the nursery eye. Mara could not breathe. The court murmured. Veyron raised his staff. Enough. The memory did not obey him. In the vision, Mara Vey turned towards someone beyond the flames. "He is not dead. The child is not dead." A man stepped from the smoke. Young Veyron. No silver in his hair. No patient sorrow in his face. Only fury. "You saw nothing," he said. Mara backed toward the cradle screen. "I saw you enter before the fire." The memory shook. Aurelian's face had gone pale. "The child," he said. "Which child?" Veyron's eyes flashed. "A royal infant, lost to rebel fire." The bowl spoke over him, true air concealed. The words struck the sun court like a bell. Nobles recoiled. Priests began whispering prayers. The guards nearest Mara shifted, uncertain whether to seize her or kneel to the relic in her hands. Aurelian looked at his uncle slowly. "Concealed." Veyron's voice hardened. "The relic is lying through servant blood." Mara finally spoke, though fear scraped every word. "Then let it burn me." The court turned toward her. She lifted the bowl higher. "If my blood is corrupt, let it do what you promised. Let it burn my hands to ash before everyone." Veyron's face went still. The bowl's eye brightened. Aurelian stared at her as if he had expected pleading, and found a blade. Something unreadable moved through his expression. Not trust. Not yet. Respect, perhaps, in its most dangerous first form. "Continue," the king said. The crown on his brow flared black. He staggered. Mara stepped forward without thinking. The bowl pulled her with it. Gold light shot from the dragon eye to Aurelian's crown. The blackened rim cracked once, and inside the crack, Mara saw another memory. A child king, standing beside a burned nursery. Veyron kneeling before him with one hand on the crown, whispering, "Your cousin died because the Sun-Eye's servants wanted your throne. Trust no witness but me." Aurelian's jaw clenched. The bowl spoke. Crown fear implanted. Veyron's patience broke. "Seize her." The guards moved. This time, Aurelian did not hesitate. No. The word rang through the Sun Court. The crown punished him. Black fire lashed across his brow, forcing him to one knee on the throne steps. Nobles cried out. Veyron raised his hand as if pained by the sight, but Mara saw the satisfaction beneath it. The king could command armies, but not against the lie his crown had been fed. Mara turned toward the guards, the bowl blazing in her hands. "Do not touch me, unless you want to be seen." The first guard stopped. The second did not. He grabbed Mara's arm. The dead sun bowl opened wider. The guard screamed not from burning, but from memory. Gold light wrapped around him, showing the court a younger version of him taking orders outside the temple vault, blocking servants from leaving, while smoke filled the lower halls. He fell back, shaking. "I was told it was quarantine," he whispered. The bowl spoke, accessory by obedience. The court erupted. Veyron struck his staff against the marble. This is why the Sun-Eye line was erased. It turns order into accusation. Mara looked at him across the golden light. "No," she said. "It turns hidden things visible." The bowl warmed at last. Not burning, recognizing. A thin golden line opened beneath Mara's skin, running from her palms to her wrists like sunlight under water. The black linen wraps fell away. On the inside of her left wrist, a mark appeared. A small golden eye ringed with dragonfire. The nobles saw it. So did Aurelian. So did Veyron. The regent whispered, "That line was dead." The bowl answered with its ancient voice, "Last son." Eyewitness confirmed. Mara felt the weight of every stair in the hall. For years, her mother's name had been used to make her small. Now that same blood had opened the king's murder relic. Aurelian forced himself to stand, one hand pressed to the cracked crown. His eyes were no longer unreadable. They were furious, but not at her. "What happened to the true heir?" he asked. The dead sun bowl turned its golden eye toward the sealed doors behind the throne. A door Mara had never seen opened. A door without a handle. The bowl spoke. "Ask the nursery ash." The sealed doors behind the throne had never needed guards. No servant was allowed to polish them. No noble leaned near them. No priest touched the gold sunbursts carved into their black wood. The doors stood behind Dragon King Aurelian's throne, like a piece of architecture too sacred to question and too feared to name. Mara had passed through the Sun Court carrying wine, bread, ashtrays, and water basins for 5 years. She had never once seen those doors open. Now, the dead sun bowl stared at them. Its golden dragon eye burned steady in her hands, and the mark on her left wrist glowed beneath her skin like sunlight trying to escape. Around the hall, nobles stood frozen between terror and calculation. The guard who had touched Mara still knelt on the floor, trembling under the memory the bowl had forced out of him. Lord Regent Veyron recovered his voice first. "The nursery ash is sealed by royal mourning law." Aurelian turned from the doors to him. The crown on his brow still pulsed black at the cracked rim, but he stood upright now, jaw tight, amber eyes bright with something too controlled to be called rage. "Open it." Veyron's expression hardened. "No." The word struck the hall louder than a shout. A regent did not refuse the Dragon King before the court, not unless he believed the king could not enforce the command. The crown proved him right. The moment Aurelian stepped toward the sealed doors, black fire lashed from the crown across his temple. He staggered, one hand gripping the throne's armrest. The court gasped, and several nobles looked away as if his pain embarrassed them. Mara did not look away. She saw the shape of it now, The crown did not merely weaken when Veyron spoke. It had been taught to punish Aurelian whenever he moved toward the truth of the nursery fire. The king was not protected from the past. He was fenced away from it. The bowl warmed in her palms. Aurelian's gaze found hers through the gold light. "Can it open the doors?" Mara looked down at the dragon eye. The pupil narrowed. Inside it, ash swirled. "I think it wants me to carry it there." Veyron's staff struck the marble. "She will not approach royal mourning ground." Mara looked at him. "Why? Will the dead lie too?" A dangerous silence followed. Then the bowl blinked. The carved sunbursts on the sealed doors opened like eyes. Every noble cried out. Aurelian descended the last step from the throne, moving slowly this time, as if he had learned not to fight the crown head-on. Mara saw the pain in his face when the black fire tried to tighten again. But he did not command. He did not ask Veyron. He simply looked at her. "Walk," he said, not as an order, as permission before a court that had never asked a servant girl to choose anything. Mara took the first step. The bowl stayed cool. She took another. The gold eye remained fixed on the doors. The closer she came to the throne, the more the crown on Aurelian's brow darkened. Thin lines of black fire ran down his temples. He clenched his hands, but made no sound. Mara stopped. "If I go closer, it hurts you." Aurelian's mouth tightened. "It has hurt me for years. That does not make it nothing." The words surprised them both. Veyron's eyes sharpened. The court heard it too, the servant girl speaking to the Dragon King, not like an object of fear, not like a distant ruler, but like a wounded man standing too near a blade he had been told was a crown. Aurelian's voice lowered. "Do not stop because of me." Mara wanted to say she was not stopping for him. That would have been easier. But the truth was stranger. She did not trust him. She did not know if he deserved the pity that tried to rise in her when the crown punished him. Yet she had seen the child memory inside the bowl. She had seen Veyron plant fear in him beside a burned nursery. He had been made into a weapon against her mother's name, and weapons could still cut. But sometimes they had first been children. Mara continued. When she reached the sealed doors, the dead sun bowl lifted in her hands without her moving it. Golden light poured from the dragon eye into the carved sunbursts. The doors groaned. Veyron shouted, "By morning law, remain sealed." The doors stopped. The bowl spoke. Morning law forged. Gold light shot across the door, burning away the top layer of black lacquer. Beneath it, hidden words appeared in old Sanskrit. Nursery crime chamber. Witness ash preserved. Open only to royal blood or sun eye sight. Aurelian went still. "Crime chamber," he said. Veyron's face had lost color. Mara looked at him over her shoulder. "You renamed it Mourning Ground." The bowl answered. False title confirmed. The doors opened. Cold air rolled out, carrying the scent of ash, old milk, burned silk, and something sweetly rotten beneath incense. Mara's stomach turned. Beyond the doors lay a chamber, no larger than a nursery and no smaller than a tomb. The walls were white stone blackened by old fire. A cradle stood at the center, half burned and covered with a glass dome. Ash lay over everything, but not randomly. It had gathered in circles, spirals, and tiny handprints across the floor. Above the cradle hung a mobile of gold dragons, melted into strange shapes by heat. Aurelian stepped to the threshold and stopped, as if an invisible chain had caught his throat. The crown flared black. Mara looked at him. "You cannot enter." His eyes remained on the cradle. "I was told I found my cousin dead here." The bowl's pupil widened. Inside the nursery ash, something moved. A small handprint glowed gold on the floor. Then another. Then another. They led not to the cradle, but away from it, toward the wall behind the melted mobile. Mara stepped inside. The ash did not stir under her bare feet. Veyron's voice came from the hall, sharp and cold. "If you enter, servant girl, you carry the guilt of every rebel who burned that child." Mara paused. For 17 years, that sentence had ruled her life in different shapes. Your mother burned the nursery. Your blood killed the heir. Your hands belong in ash, because ash is what your line left behind. She looked at the handprints glowing on the floor, small, alive with memory. "No," she said. The sun-eye mark at her wrist burned brighter. "I carry what they blamed on us." The nursery ash rose, not as smoke, as witness. It swirled around Mara in rings of gold and black, forming figures too fragile to be ghosts and too clear to be dust. She saw her mother again, Mara Vey, kneeling beside the cradle. In her arms, a royal infant wrapped in gold linen cried silently. Veyron stood before her, young, furious, bleeding from one cheek. "Give me the child," he said. Leora shook her head. "You killed the wrong one." The court gasped from beyond the doorway. Aurelian gripped the doorframe hard enough to crack the wood. "The wrong one," he whispered. The ash vision shifted. Beside the cradle lay another infant blanket. Empty, blood darkened its edge. The dead sun bowl spoke from Mara's hands. True royal heir removed before fire. Substitute child killed. Murder hidden under rebellion charge. Aurelian's face drained of color. Veyron's voice cut through the chamber. Lies made from ash. The golden dragon eye in the bowl turned toward him. The ash behind Mara formed a final image. Veyron holding the black eye. Bead Mara had found in the vault, pressing it against the dead child's brow, and whispering, "Let the servant line bear the son's guilt." Mara's breath caught. The black bead had not been evidence. It had been the lock. The ash handprints on the floor began moving again, crawling toward the back wall. Mara followed them. There, hidden behind burned stone and old prayer seals, was a narrow crack shaped like a dragon's closed eye. The bowl pulsed in her hands. A child's voice whispered from inside the wall. "Not dead." Aurelian's eyes widened. Veyron stepped into the nursery doorway despite the relic's light, panic finally breaking through his control. "Mara, move away from that wall." It was the first time he had used her name without accusation. That told her everything. Mara lifted the dead sun bowl toward the crack. The golden dragon eye opened wider. The wall answered with a heartbeat. A single pulse moved through the burned nursery wall, and the entire Sun Court heard it. Not loudly. That made it worse. It was small, soft, almost fragile. A heartbeat hidden behind stone for 17 years, still answering after everyone in the kingdom had been taught to mourn the wrong child. Mara stood before the narrow crack, shaped like a dragon's closed eye. The dead sun bowl lifted in both hands. Gold light poured from the bowl's dragon pupil and touched the wall in slow, searching rays. Behind her, the ash figures trembled. Her mother, Mara Vey, holding a crying infant. Young Veyron reaching toward the child. The substitute blanket dark with blood beside the cradle. At the doorway, Dragon King Aurelian could not cross the threshold. The crown on his brow had darkened to almost black, and thin lines of shadow fire ran down his temples whenever he tried to step inside the nursery. He gripped the doorframe so tightly that splinters cut into his palm. Lord Regent Veyron stood beside him now, no longer smiling. "Mara," he said, voice low, "put the bowl down." The court behind him went silent. Aurelian turned his head slowly toward his uncle. "You used her name." Veyron's jaw tightened. Mara did not lower the bowl. The wall pulsed again. The golden eye in the relic widened, and the crack in the burned stone opened a finger's width. Cold air breathed out from within. It did not smell of rot. It smelled of old linen, sealed dust, and dragon milk sweet metallic, impossible. A child had been hidden there, or something of a child. Mara's hands shook. Who is behind the wall? The bowl answered, living blood concealed. Aurelian went still. The nobles beyond the door broke into whispers. Living. The word changed the shape of the room. Dead heirs could be mourned, blamed, lied over, painted into murals. Living heirs could return. Veyron's face became unreadable again, but his eyes betrayed him. Fear moved through them like a blade under silk. There is no living heir, he said. There is only old temple magic feeding on a servant girl's desire to be more than she is. Mara almost flinched. Almost. That was always how his kind struck. Not only at blood, but at the hunger beneath wounds. The secret wish that maybe she was not merely the daughter of a traitor, not merely the girl sent where noble hands would not go, not merely ashwork and kitchen smoke and lowered eyes, but the bowl was cold in her hands. Steady. It did not flatter her. It witnessed. Aurelian's voice came rough from the doorway. Mara, what do you see? She looked into the bowl. The golden eye reflected not her face, but the hidden space behind the wall. A narrow chamber, sun seals, a cradle made of black dragon bone, a figure curled inside, too old for an infant, too still for a child asleep. Gold thread wrapped around the body like a cocoon. Mara swallowed. A chamber, a cradle. Veyron moved. Not toward her, toward Aurelian. He placed a hand on the king's crown. The black fire at the rim surged. Aurelian gasped and dropped to one knee outside the nursery. Mara turned sharply. Stop. Veyron looked at her. You forget your place. The dead sun bowl blinked. Gold light struck Veyron's hand on the crown. The court saw the memory at once. A younger Veyron kneeling before a child king after the nursery fire, setting that same crown on Aurelian's head and whispering, Your grief will obey me, or it will drown the kingdom. Aurelian looked up slowly. His eyes were no longer cold. They were burning. My grief? Veyron's hand fell from the crown. Too late. The bowl spoke. Royal sorrow weaponized. The crown cracked at one blackened edge. Aurelian stood with effort. You told me my cousin died in my arms. Veyron's voice hardened. You were a child. You needed a memory that would make you strong. You gave me a memory that made me hate servants. I gave you a kingdom that did not collapse. Mara stepped closer to the wall. No. You gave him an enemy small enough to control. The dead sun bowl warmed in approval. The crack in the wall opened wider. A golden thread slipped out. It wrapped around Mara's wrist. Not burning, not binding, guiding. Aurelian saw it. Can you open it? I think so. Veyron raised his staff. If you open that wall, every law built after the nursery fire becomes unstable. Mara looked back at him. Then maybe those laws were built on a grave. On order, he snapped. The word rang through the nursery. The ash figures shifted. Mara Vey's memory lifted her head. She turned toward Mara, and for the first time, her face was clear, tired, fierce, frightened. A mother who had known no one would believe her, and had hidden proof where only her blood could wake it. Mara, the memory whispered. Mara's breath broke. Her mother had never spoken to her in memory before. Not truly, only in accusations others carried. The golden thread around Mara's wrist tightened gently, not by force, Leora's memory said. By sight. Mara understood only when the sun-eye mark on her wrist opened fully. It was not a tattoo, not a brand. An-aye. Gold light filled her vision. She saw the wall not as stone, but as testimony layered over testimony. Royal seal, mourning seal, regent seal, false ash mark, servant guilt mark, blood lock, witness lock. The final lock was a name, not the hidden heirs. Her mother's. Mara pressed her glowing wrist to the crack. Mara Vey was not a traitor, she said. The nursery shook. She was sun eye-witness. The wall split from floor to ceiling. Gold light flooded the chamber. Inside, a black dragonbone cradle rested in a narrow vault. Within it lay a young man suspended in sun thread, pale and unmoving, dark hair streaked with gold, a faint royal mark glowing at his throat. Aurelian staggered forward despite the crown's punishment. "No," he whispered. The bowl spoke over the stunned court. True heir preserved. The young man in the cradle opened one golden eye, and the crown on Aurelian's brow cracked in half. Gold light tore through the nursery like dawn, entering a tomb. Mara stood frozen before the split wall, the dead sun bowl heavy in her hands, its dragon eye wide and burning. Inside the hidden vault, the young man in the black dragonbone cradle breathed for the first time the court could hear. One breath, then another. The sound was fragile, but it struck the sun court, harder than a war horn. The nobles beyond the nursery door recoiled in waves. Some crossed themselves with old dragon signs. Others whispered prayers to dead sons. A few looked at Lord Regent Veyron, with the dawning terror of people realizing their safety had been built on the wrong story. Dragon King Aurelian stared at the young man in the cradle, as if the vault had opened inside his own chest. The crown on his brow hung split but not fallen, two broken halves still clinging to his temples with black fire. Blood trickled down one side of his face where the crack had cut him, yet he did not reach for it. His eyes were fixed on the royal mark glowing at the stranger's throat. "That mark," he said. Veyron's face had gone hard as stone. A forged remnant. The dead sun bowl blinked. False denial recorded. Mara almost laughed from shock. The relic did not shout. It did not rage. It recorded him as if his lies were insects trapped in amber. The young man in the cradle moved weakly. Sun threads snapped strand by strand around his chest, his wrists, his throat. He looked older than a child, perhaps near Mara's age, but there was something unfinished in his face, as if 17 years of sealed sleep had held him between breath and becoming. His golden eye opened fully. The other remained closed. Aurelian took one step into the nursery. The cracked crown punished him at once. Black fire surged down his neck, and he dropped a hand against the wall to steady himself. Mara turned toward him, but he shook his head before she could speak. "Do not stop." Veyron's mouth thinned. "You cannot even stand before him without your crown breaking. That is not proof of his claim. That is proof of danger." Aurelian looked at him. "To whom?" The dead sun bowl answered. "To the murderer." Silence fell. Veyron raised his staff, not toward Mara, toward the cradle. The movement was small, fast, almost too fast to see. But the bowl saw. Its golden eye flared, and every shadow in the nursery sharpened. A ring of black sunlight burst from the relic and froze Veyron's staff mid-air. The court saw another memory in the light. Veyron standing over a dead infant, pressing the black eye, bead to the child's brow, while Mara Vey hid the living heir behind the wall with blood on her hands and terror in her face. Young Veyron turned in the memory. He saw Leora sealing the vault. He smiled. "Let him sleep," he said. "A living heir no one can reach is better than a dead one they can mourn correctly." Mara's stomach turned. Aurelian's voice came hollow. "You knew he was alive." Veyron lowered his staff slowly. "I knew the realm could not survive 2 heirs." The young man in the cradle whispered something. Mara moved closer. "What?" His lips parted again. No sound came. The sun thread around his throat tightened, glowing black gold. The bowl spoke. Voice sealed by regent law. Mara looked at Aurelian. "He cannot speak," Veyron said. "He has nothing to say that would not destroy the kingdom." Aurelian's head turned. For the first time since Mara had ever seen him, The Dragon King looked less like a blade and more like a wound that had finally understood the hand holding it open. "You made me hate the bloodline that saved him," he said. "I made you rule. You made me useful." Veyron's eyes flashed. "I made you king." The crown cracked wider. Aurelian flinched, but did not look away. "No," he said. "You made me afraid of losing what was never fully mine." The dead sun bowl warmed in Mara's hands, the hidden heir's golden eye fixed on Aurelian. Not with accusation, with grief. That was worse. Mara stepped toward the cradle. The golden thread around her wrist guided her, and her mother's ash memory stood near the split wall, watching with hands clasped at her chest. Mara Vey had died a traitor in the records, but in the nursery ash, she stood as witness. Mara lifted the bowl over the cradle. The dragon eye looked down at the sealed throat of the hidden heir. "What is his name?" she whispered. The bowl did not answer. Instead, the ash moved. Leora's memory reached toward Mara, and the shape of a name formed in the smoke between them, not written. Sein, a small child in gold linen, laughing under a sun mobile before the fire. A nursery nurse, kissing his brow. Queen Mother's hands fastening a tiny dragon clasp at his collar. Aurelian, no more than a boy himself, reaching into the cradle and offering him a wooden dragon. The name entered Mara's mouth, like sunlight through a locked window. Teronkael. The hidden heir gasped. The seal around his throat split. The court beyond the nursery doors erupted. Veyron shouted, "That name is dead." Theron's second eye opened. Gold light filled both. "Not dead," he whispered, voice rough from 17 years of silence. "Hidden." Aurelian staggered, as if the word had struck him. The crown split further. One half dropped from his brow and shattered on the nursery floor. Black fire leaked from it, like poison. The dead sun bowl turned its gaze to Aurelian. Mourning heir misled, then to Theron, true heir preserved, then to Mara, son, eyewitness required. Mara felt every eye in the court on her back. For years, witness had meant blame. Her mother saw too much, so she was called traitor. Mara carried the name, so she was called dangerous. But now the relic waited in her hands, not asking her to rule, not asking her to forgive, not asking her to burn anyone, only to see clearly and speak what she saw. Veyron stepped into the nursery at last. The ash recoiled from his boots. "You are playing with succession fire, girl," he said. "If you name him before the court, the border houses will split. If Aurelian steps aside, armies will move. If he refuses, this preserved ghost becomes a banner for rebellion. You think truth solves power. Truth sharpens knives." Mara's fingers tightened around the bowl. Fear moved through her, because part of what he said could become real. Truth did not make people kind. It only removed the veil from what they wanted. Aurelian looked at her then, not at Siren, not at Veyron, at Mara. "Do not let him make you carry the kingdom's fear alone." The words struck something deep. For a breath, she forgot he was the king who had sat on the throne while she was dragged to burn. She saw the boy who had been fed a false grief until it became law. She saw the man trying, badly and painfully, not to turn her sight into another tool. The bowl's eye softened. Mara turned back to the court. "My mother did not murder the royal heir," she said. The ash figures rose higher behind her. She hid him. Gold light flooded from the bowl into the sun court. The memory expanded beyond the nursery, filling the entire hall. Every noble saw Mara Vey carrying baby Theron to the hidden vault. Every noble saw Veyron discover the truth and choose to seal him instead of kill him, because a sleeping heir could be used later or buried forever depending on which served him better. Then the final image appeared. A young Aurelian sobbing beside the burned cradle. Veyron kneeling before him. "The servants killed him," Veyron whispered. Remember that. Rule from that wound. The vision ended. No one spoke. Theron slowly sat up in the cradle, sun thread falling from his shoulders like dead vines. Aurelian reached up and removed the last broken half of his crown. This time, no black fire stopped him. He let it fall. The sound was small. The court heard it anyway. Veyron's face changed. Not fear now. Decision. If the crown will not hold, he said softly, then the Sun Court must. The gold tiles beneath every noble's feet ignited with black sun marks. Mara felt the floor turn against her. The dead sun bowl spoke one final warning. Court, complicity awakening. Black sun marks spread beneath the nobles like cracks under polished gold. At first, no one understood what they were. Then the dead sun bowl opened wider in Mara's hands, and the Sun Court began to remember itself. A duchess near the western pillars gasped as a black mark burned beneath her slippers. Gold light rose around her in a ring, showing a memory from 17 years ago. She stood in a private chamber, signing a silence oath, while Veyron placed a ruby necklace in her palm. Her husband watched from the shadows, pale and obedient. The oath did not say murder. It said stability. It did not say hidden heir. It said succession, peace. Across the hall, a lord stumbled backward as the mark beneath him ignited. His memory showed him ordering 3 servant families removed from the palace after the nursery fire. Not killed by his hand. Not directly. Only sent to ash mines under suspicion of Sunai treason, where sickness and hunger finished what the court had started. Another noble fell to one knee. Another turned away from the light as if not looking, could make the memory vanish. Mara's stomach tightened, court complicity awakening. The bowl had not meant only Veyron. The entire Sun Court had stood on the lie, because standing there kept their shoes clean. Lord Regent Veyron lifted his staff, and the black sun marks flared brighter. "You see?" he called, voice ringing across the chaos. Truth does not purify a court. It destroys one. Every house here touched the law after the nursery fire. Every seal, every decree, every exile. Every inheritance given after the Sunai line was condemned. If I fall, your houses fall with me. The panic changed. Mara saw it happen. Shock became calculation. Horror became self-protection. The nobles who had recoiled from Veyron now looked at one another, measuring how much truth they could survive. Aurelian stepped out of the nursery with a broken crown at his feet behind him and blood still dark at his brow. Without the crown, he looked both less untouchable and more dangerous. His amber eyes swept the court, seeing the same transformation Mara saw. Veyron smiled faintly. "This is rule, nephew. Not purity, not servant visions. Rule." Theron Cale sat upright in the hidden cradle behind Mara, weak but awake, sun thread still clinging to his shoulders. The sight of him should have been enough to break every lie in the hall. It was not. Power rarely died, because truth appeared. It fought harder. The black sun marks beneath the nobles began to rise as chains of shadow gold light. They twisted upward around ankles, wrists, throats, not binding them as prisoners, but connecting them. House to house, oath to oath, silence to silence. The court's fear became a net. Mara felt the floor pull at her. The dead sun bowl grew heavier. Veyron's eyes fixed on it. "Give me the relic, Mara. End this before they decide the only way to save themselves is to burn every witness left in the room." Aurelian moved toward her. The black sun chains tightened around the nobles, and several guards raised their swords as if responding to commands they had not chosen aloud. Mara took one step back. The bowl whispered through heat against her palms. "Do not force sight into closed eyes." She almost laughed, breathless and afraid. How was she supposed to expose a court without making it look? Then Leora Vey's ash memory moved beside her. Her mother stood half-formed in gold and black dust, eyes fixed not on Veyron, but on the nobles trembling beneath their own marks. "Witness is not a blade," Leora whispered. "It is a lamp." Mara looked at her. "They will close their eyes, then give the light to the ones who were never allowed in the room." Mara understood. The Sun Court had been built for nobles, priests, and royal blood. But the lie had lived in kitchens, ash mines, servant ledgers, guard posts, sealed nurseries, and lower halls. Veyron had made the court complicit by making power afraid. Mara did not need every noble to confess first. She needed the people the lie had buried. She turned toward the great bronze doors of the Sun Court. Veyron's face tightened. "Do not." Mara lifted the dead sun bowl. The dragon eye turned from the nobles to the doors. "Open," she said. Nothing happened. For one terrible heartbeat. She thought the relic would not answer a servant command. Then Aurelian spoke beside her. "Open the court." The doors shook. The black sun chains snapped toward his throat, but the broken crown no longer held him. He staggered from the force, and Mara instinctively reached out. Her hand caught his wrist. Gold light passed between them. Not romance. Not yet. Something sharper. Shared defiance under a hall that wanted both of them useful and silent. The bronze doors burst open. Beyond them stood the palace servants, kitchen girls, ash sweepers, stable boys, lower archivists, water carriers, old women who scrubbed blood from marble before dawn, guards not noble enough to be invited into judgment, but loyal enough to be blamed when orders turned cruel. They had heard the bowl, or perhaps the bowl had been calling them all along. At the front stood Steward Corrin, the man who had sent Mara into the vault. He looked terrified, but he stepped into the Sun Court anyway. Veyron's voice sharpened. "This is a royal chamber," Aurelian answered before Mara could. "Then it should learn who keeps it standing." The servants entered. The black sun marks faltered. Mara lifted the bowl toward them, fear clawing at her throat. "If you saw something after the nursery fire, speak it. If your family was sent away under sun-eye guilt, speak it. If you carried ashes that were not from rebels, speak it." Silence. Then an old laundry woman raised one shaking hand. "My sister washed the nursery linen," she said. "She told me there were 2 cradle blankets, one royal gold, one plain white. She vanished before morning." The bowl blinked. Gold light formed around her. Witness accepted. A young guard stepped forward next. My father stood watch at the lower vault. He said Lord Veyron brought something wrapped in gold linen below the palace after the fire. He was dismissed for fever 3 days later. Witness accepted. A kitchen boy, no older than 15, spoke through tears. "My grandmother died in the ash mines. She always said Leora Vey saved a child." The ash memory of Mara's mother bowed her head. Witness accepted. With every servant voice, the black sun chains around the nobles weakened. Not because the nobles confessed, because the lie no longer belonged only to them. It had been carried by those it crushed, and now they were returning the weight. Veyron's composure broke. He raised his staff toward the servants. "Enough." Aurelian stepped in front of them. So did Mara. The Dragon King and the servant girl stood side by side beneath the open golden dome, the dead sun bowl burning between them like a living sun. Veyron stared at them. "You would place servant testimony beside royal law?" Aurelian's voice was cold. "Royal law used servant blood as a grave." Mara lifted the bowl higher. "Now servant blood gets to speak." The dead sun bowl opened fully. The golden dragon eye rose from the black relic, no longer flat within the bowl, but vast above the court, blazing like a second sun beneath the dome. Its gaze swept over nobles, servants, priests, guards, Veyron, Aurelian, Theron, and Mara. Then it stopped over the throne. The sun throne cracked open at its base. Inside was not gold. Inside was ash. The bowl spoke. Final witness buried beneath the seat of rule. Veyron went still. Theron's weak voice came from the nursery behind them. My mother. Aurelian turned. Theron gripped the side of the cradle, trembling. My mother was not dead when he sealed the throne. The court fell silent again. Mara felt the bowl pull toward the sun throne. Beneath its cracked base, something began to breathe in ash. Veyron whispered, almost to himself. She was supposed to be silent. The golden dragon eye turned slowly back to him. Then let her speak. The sun throne had never looked less like a throne than it did with ash breathing beneath it. Mara stood in the center of the sun court, the dead sun bowl burning in her hands, and the enormous golden dragon eye hovering above the hall like judgment made visible. Around her, servants and nobles stood together for the first time, not equal, not reconciled, but trapped inside the same revealed truth. The black sun chain still clung to noble wrists and ankles, weaker now, flickering whenever a servant's testimony rose against them. At the base of the sun throne, the crack widened. Ash breathed out again. Aurelian stepped toward it, but the broken crown at his feet hissed with black fire, and pain moved across his face. Though he no longer wore it, the old grief planted inside him had not vanished. Lies did not leave the body just because metal broke. Mara saw him pause. So did Veyron. The regent's face sharpened with desperate hope. Do not approach that seat, nephew. Whatever speaks from beneath it has been rotting in murder ash for 17 years. It will not know truth from revenge. Aurelian looked at him. You buried it there. I contained it. The dead sun bowl blinked. False word recorded. Veyron's jaw tightened. Theron Cale stood in the nursery doorway behind Mara, one hand gripping the frame. Sun thread still hanging from his shoulders like torn gold webbing. He was too weak to walk far, but his voice carried through the court. My mother, he said again. She was alive when he sealed the throne. Aurelian turned toward him, and Mara saw the pain in that glance. Theron was the true royal heir. Aurelian was the grieving cousin raised on a lie. Neither of them had chosen the wound that now stood between them. What was her name? Mara asked. Theron closed his eyes. The dead sun bowl dimmed slightly. Listening. Queen Mara Vey, he whispered. My mother. Your aunt. Aurelian. The ash beneath the throne surged upward. A woman's scream split the hall. Not loud at first. Buried. Hoarse. As if it had been trapped beneath gold and stone for 17 years and had forgotten how to become sound. Several nobles covered their ears. The servants did not. Too many of them knew what muffled suffering sounded like through walls no one important opened. Mara lifted the bowl toward the throne. Queen Mara Vey was not dead when the throne was sealed. The ash answered. Gold sparks moved through it, forming the outline of a woman kneeling inside a hidden chamber beneath the throne. Her gown had once been royal white, but ash had turned it gray. A broken sun circlet hung from her hair. Her hands were chained not to a wall, but to the roots of the throne itself, black gold bands biting into her wrists. Aurelian stopped breathing. My Lyra, he said. The ash woman lifted her head. Her face was fragile with pain, but her eyes were open. Living eyes. Not fully alive, not fully dead. Preserved in ash and throne fire, forced to witness every law signed above her. The court recoiled. Veyron's voice broke sharp and fast. That is not the queen. It is ash mimicry. The dead sun bowl replied before anyone could. Final witness confirmed. Mara's hands trembled. Final witness. Her mother had hidden Theron. The servants had carried pieces of truth. The bowl had remembered the murder. But Queen Mara had seen everything from beneath the throne. Aurelian took another step. The ash chains around Mara tightened. She gasped. and the sun throne brightened as if drinking from her pain. Mara understood. The throne had not merely hidden her, it had used her. Every decree after the nursery fire, every exile, every punishment, every law against Sunai blood had passed over a living witness chained beneath the seat of rule. Aurelian's face hardened with horror. "What did you do to her?" Veyron's elegance finally cracked. "What was necessary?" Theron's voice shook. "You sealed my mother under the throne to prevent a succession war," Veyron snapped. "She would have named you. She would have split the court. Aurelian was already crowned in public. The nobles had already accepted him. A living queen with a hidden heir would have drowned the kingdom in civil blood." Mara stared at him. "So you buried her alive beneath his rule?" Veyron's eyes flashed toward her. "You speak of rule, as if truth is enough to hold one. Truth does not command armies. Truth does not feed border houses. Truth does not stop ambitious men from using boys like banners." The bull's golden eye narrowed. Aurelian looked at Theron. Theron looked back, weak and pale in the nursery doorway, the royal mark at his throat glowing. For one breath, the court seemed to wait for them to become enemies. That was what Veyron had built everything around. 2 heirs, 1 throne, fear sharp enough to keep lies useful. Aurelian's voice came low. "Theron." The true heir straightened as much as he could. Aurelian said, "I will not fight you for a throne built over your mother's chains." The black sun marks beneath the nobles flickered wildly. Veyron stared at him as if he had spoken in a dead language. "You would give the realm to a man who woke an hour ago?" "No," Aurelian said. "I would stop pretending stolen ground becomes rightful because enough time passes." Mara felt the bowl warm. Theron's expression broke not into triumph, but grief. "I do not know how to be king." Aurelian looked at him. "Neither did I. That made me easy to shape." The words silenced the whole more deeply than anger would have. Veyron saw his trap failing. So he made a new one. He lifted both hands, palms outward, and the black sun chains around the nobles flared. "Then let the court choose survival," he said. The chains tightened around every noble, marked by complicity. Some cried out. Some reached toward him without meaning to, pulled by fear and oath. Veyron's staff glowed black gold, feeding on their panic. If Aurelian refuses to defend his crown, and Theron is unfit to hold it, then regent law resumes. The sun throne opened wider. Ash spiraled upward from Queen Melira's chains. Mara realized too late what he intended. Veyron did not need Aurelian crowned. He did not need Theron dead. He needed the court terrified enough to make him necessary again. The dead sun bowl became suddenly heavy. Veyron's gaze locked on Mara. "And the servant witness will be the first offering to restore order." The gold tiles beneath her feet split. Black sunlight rose around her ankles. Aurelian moved. Theron shouted, but the thrown ash reached faster. It wrapped around Mara's legs, waist, and wrists, pulling the bowl downward as if the court itself had opened a grave beneath her. The dead sun bowl did not burn. It spoke into her bones. A witness is not saved by being held. A witness is saved by being heard. Mara looked at the servants, gathered by the open bronze doors. Then at Queen Melira, chained beneath the throne. Then at her mother's ash memory beside the nursery wall. Fear nearly closed her throat. But she had spent her life under a record brand she did not earn. She knew what silence cost. So as the ash dragged her toward the cracked throne, Mara lifted the bowl as high as she could and screamed the truth. Queen Melira lives beneath the throne. The golden dragon eye burst open above the hall, and every servant voice answered her. The first voice came from the laundry woman. Not loud, not polished, not noble, but it crossed the sun court like a knife drawn from clean water. I saw the queen's blood on the underside of the throne cloth. The ash, pulling Mara toward the cracked sun throne, stopped for half a breath. The dead sun bowl blazed above her hands, its golden dragon eye wide enough now that every face in the hall reflected inside it. The black sunlight around her ankles hissed, trying to drag her down again, but another servant stepped forward. The young guard whose father had watched the lower vault raised his shaking sword and lowered it point first to the floor. My father heard a woman crying beneath the throne for 3 nights after the nursery fire. The ash loosened. A kitchen boy lifted his chin, tears running down his face. My grandmother said the old queen was fed through a hidden grate before they sent her to the mines. A stable girl near the bronze doors whispered, "The throne smelled of burned milk every summer feast." "Witness accepted," the dead sun bowl said. Gold light spread from the servants' feet across the court. One by one, the voices rose, not all with perfect facts, not all with full memories. Some carried only fragments: a sealed tray taken below the dais, a regent's guard washing ash from his boots, a nurse dismissed for saying the throne breathed, a priest refusing to bless the sun throne after midnight, a servant child slapped for asking why someone was crying under the floor. But witness did not require a courtly sentence. It required truth spoken before fear could swallow it again. Queen Melira's ash form lifted her head beneath the throne. With every servant voice, the black gold chains around her wrists thinned. The throne groaned, no longer strong enough to pretend it was only furniture. Veyron's face twisted. "Enough," he shouted. No one stopped. That was the first true defeat in his eyes. Not Aurelian stepping aside, not Theron waking, not Mara holding the bowl. The servants kept speaking after he ordered silence. The black sun chains around the nobles flickered violently. Some nobles tried to step away from their marks, but the gold tiles beneath them held. Court complicity had awakened. Now it had to answer. Veyron raised his staff toward Mara again. Aurelian crossed the hall before the black light could strike her. He seized the staff with both hands. The blast hit him instead. Gold and black fire exploded across his armor, driving him to one knee. The old cracked crown on the nursery floor flared as if trying to crawl back toward him. Pain sharpened his features, but he did not release the staff. Mara cried, "Aurelian!" He looked up through the fire. "Keep speaking." The words were not command. They were trust. Mara gripped the dead sun bowl and turned toward the throne. "Queen Melira Kyle," she said, voice shaking but clear. "You are not ash. You are witness." The bowl repeated her words in thunder. Final witness named. The sun throne split vida. A woman's hand emerged from the ash beneath it. Thin, burned, still alive. Theron made a broken sound from the nursery doorway. "Mother." Queen Melira reached toward that voice. The court watched the impossible with its mouth open and its hands useless. Mara stepped forward, but the ash still held her legs. Aurelian still struggled against Veyron's staff. Theron was too weak to reach the throne. The servants' voices had loosened the prison, but not broken it. Then, Mara Vey's ash memory moved. Mara's mother crossed the nursery threshold, no longer only a replay of old truth. She moved like a witness, choosing her final act. Her body was made of black dust and gold light, but her face was steady when she looked at Mara. "Sun-Eye blood does not free truth by burning the guilty," Leora said. "It frees truth by making the hidden visible until no one can survive denying it." Mara swallowed. "How?" Leora pointed toward the dead sun bowl, turned the eye downward. Mara looked at the relic in her hands. The golden dragon eye stared upward at the court, at Veyron, at the throne, at every trembling noble. It had exposed memory after memory. But beneath the throne, The final prison still remained half-hidden, its roots buried under court law, noble oaths, and the fear of succession war. Mara understood. The bowl had looked at everyone else. Now, it had to look at the foundation. She forced her arms downward against the ash, trying to pull her in. The dead sun bowl resisted for one heartbeat, then turned in her hands. Its giant golden eye faced the cracked floor beneath the throne. The sun court vanished. Not physically, but every person inside it saw beneath their feet. They saw the hidden chamber under the throne, where Queen Melira had been chained alive after the nursery fire. They saw Veyron sealing her wrists to the throne roots with black sun law. They saw him forcing her to watch Aurelian crowned under false grief. They saw him using her royal blood to keep the throne stable while blaming the Sunai servants for murder. They saw each noble house come later, on a bit on, some suspicious, some frightened, some bribed, some silent because silence protected their lands, some silent because the servant purge benefited them, some silent because if the true heir lived, every title granted after the fire might be questioned. The golden eye showed all of it. No screaming could drown it. No title could soften it. No law could rename it. At the center of the vision stood Veyron, younger and smiling, as he placed his palm on the throne above Melira's prison. "Let the court stand on what it refuses to see," he said. The vision ended. The sun court returned. No one moved. Then the first noble dropped to his knees. Not in worship. Collapse. The black sun chain around his throat snapped, and he whispered, "I signed the silence ledger." Another noblewoman sobbed, "My house took the eastern lands after the servant purge." A lord near the pillars tore the gold dragon clasp from his cloak. "I knew the fire report was altered." Confession spread like rot finally exposed to air. The black sun net lost its strength. Veyron staggered as the power feeding his staff drained away into the floor. Aurelian rose. Slowly, he broke the staff across his knee. The crack sounded clean. Veyron stared at the broken wood in disbelief. Mara felt the ash release her legs. She ran to the throne and dropped to her knees beside the reaching hand beneath the split stone. The dead sun bowl lowered itself to the floor between them. Its eye poured gold light into the crack. Queen Melira rose from the ash, not young, not untouched, not restored into a beautiful lie. She emerged thin, burned, trembling, wrapped in chains that had become brittle with witness. Her eyes found Theron first. "My son," she whispered. Theron stumbled forward. Aurelian caught him before he fell, then helped him toward the throne. Together, the false king and the true heir knelt beside the queen who had been buried under both their lives. Veyron backed away. "No," he said softly. "If she speaks, there is no succession left." Melira looked at him. Her voice was fragile. Her words were not. "There was no succession after you murdered a child and buried the living." The dead sun bowl opened brighter. Murder confirmed. Veyron's shadow split behind him. Inside it appeared the dead substitute child from the nursery blanket, nameless until now. Melira lifted her shaking hand. His name was Coriel. He was a servant, born infant, taken from the lower nursery because no noble would look closely at his face once he was burned. Mara's breath stopped. The court went cold. Veyron had not only hidden a true heir, he had murdered a servant child to create the lie. The bowl spoke again. Blood crime complete. Every black sun mark in the court turned gold. Veyron fell to his knees, not from remorse, but because the floor itself would no longer hold him standing, and the dead sun bowl finally turned its eye away from Mara. For the first time since Mara lifted the relic, the sun court was no longer looking at her as the danger. The dead sun bowl had turned from her hands toward the man on his knees before the cracked throne. Lord Regent Veyron knelt in the center of the gold-marked floor, his broken staff at his side, his white ceremonial robes stained by ash and black sunlight. Around him, the nobles stood trapped in the glow of their own confessions. Some wept. Some stared at the floor. Some looked toward the open doors where servants crowded the threshold, as if realizing too late that the people they had stepped over had been carrying the kingdom's memory. Queen Mylera stood beneath the split sun throne, thin and trembling but alive. Theron Kyle had both hands around hers. Aurelian knelt beside them, not touching the queen until she looked at him and gave the smallest nod. Only then did he help steady her, his face tight with a grief no crown could turn into command now. Mara watched them from a few steps away, the bowl still heavy in her hands. A true heir, a buried queen, a false king raised on a lie, a servant child murdered to make the lie believable, and her mother, Mara Vey, dead with the name traitor nailed to her bloodline. The court had been overturned, but not healed. Veyron lifted his head slowly. His eyes moved from Mylera to Theron, from Aurelian to Mara, then to the nobles around him. He saw what remained. Fear, shame, political ruin, houses whose lands, marriages, and titles had all grown from the nursery fire's false record. And because he had ruled through fear for so long, he knew exactly where to strike. "You think this ends with me kneeling?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, but it carried. No one answered. Veyron smiled faintly. "Then listen carefully. If Theron lives, every decree signed by Aurelian can be challenged. Every treaty, every execution, every border oath. If Mylera testifies, half this court becomes accessory to false succession. If the servant girl's bowl is accepted as witness, every low-born grievance becomes a royal accusation." The gold marks beneath the nobles flickered. Mara saw panic trying to rise again. Veyron turned that way like a man warming his hands at a fire. "You will lose lands," he said to the nobles. "You will lose heirs. You will lose the illusion that your houses were clean." A duchess whispered, "Silence him." But no one moved. Veyron looked at the servants next. "And you think truth will feed you? When the noble houses fall, who will be punished first?" "Who always is." The servants shifted uneasily. The dead sun bowl pulsed in Mara's hands. Aurelian stood. He looked pale without the crown. Blood dried at his temple. Armor cracked where Veyron's magic had struck him. But when he faced the court, he looked more like a king than he ever had seated beneath gold. "No one touches the servants." Veyron laughed. "You cannot promise that." "No," Aurelian said. "But I can begin by saying it where every house hears me." The bowl's eye glowed brighter. Mara looked at him. He was not defending the throne now. Not even himself. He was placing his first free command between power and the people. Power usually crushed. Theron tried to stand fully, but his knees failed. Mylera held him with a strength that looked impossible in her thin hands. "My son does not take the throne today," she said. The court froze. Veyron's smile vanished. Mylera's voice was fragile, but every word landed with weight. He was preserved, not prepared. He was hidden, not raised. He will not be thrown from a cradle into a crown, because men here need a clean answer. Theron bowed his head, relief and shame crossing his face together. Aurelian looked at Mylera. "Then what do you ask?" Her eyes moved to Mara, not to command, to witness. Mara understood before the queen spoke. "The truth must be recorded before succession is touched," Mylera said. "The dead child must be named. The servant bloodline must be cleared. Every law born from the false nursery record must be opened. Until then, no crown." A low murmur moved through the court. No crown. A kingdom hated empty space more than guilt. Veyron rose suddenly. The gold marks beneath him flared black again. He had one last reserve of power, hidden not in his staff, not in the throne, but in the original lie itself. "The dead child has no witness but her," he said, pointing at Mara, "a servant girl holding a murder relic. Kill her, and the story fractures." Aurelian moved instantly. So did Theron, weak as he was. But Veyron did not aim at Mara's body. He aimed at the bowl. Black sunlight shot from his hands and struck the dead sun bowl. The relic screamed. Mara felt the sound split through her palms, wrists, ribs. The golden dragon eye flickered. The court blurred. The memory of Coriel, the servant-born infant murdered in the nursery, shook inside the bowl like a candle in a storm. Veyron shouted, "No relic, no witness." The bowl cracked. A thin black line ran through its golden eye. Mara nearly dropped it. Aurelian reached her side, but did not grab the relic. "Mara!" The way he said her name held fear, not command. She gripped the bowl tighter. Pain tore through her palms, and gold light spilled between her fingers. Her mother's ash memory appeared beside her one last time, fading at the edges. "Son, eyewitness is not the bowl," Leora whispered. Mara looked at her through tears. "The bowl awakened sight," her mother said. "It does not own it." The crack widened. Mara felt the truth then, not as magic, but as inheritance. Every servant who had spoken, every ash memory, every hidden handprint, every lie the relic had shown. The bowl had opened the way, but witness lived in the living. She lifted the cracked relic. "Coriel," she said. The black line stopped spreading. Veyron's face changed. Mara spoke louder. His name was Coriel, servant-born child of the lower nursery, taken during the royal fire, murdered in place of Theron Cale. The dead sun bowl shattered. Gold light exploded from the broken pieces. For one breath, the court thought the witness had died. Then, every shard opened into a small golden eye. Dozens of them rose into the air, circling the sun court, reflecting not only Mara's sight, but the faces of every servant who had spoken. The laundry woman, the young guard, the kitchen boy, Steward Corrin, the ash sweepers, the stable girls, the lower archivists. The bowl was no longer one relic. It had become a court of witnesses. Veyron stumbled back. The golden eyes turned toward him. Together, they spoke. Blood crime witnessed. Black sunlight tore away from Veyron's body in strips, revealing the memories underneath. The stolen servant child, the false cradle, the sealed queen, the hidden heir, the planted hatred in Aurelian's crown, the servant purge, the years of silence. No one could claim not to see. Aurelian stepped forward, sword drawn but lowered. "Lord Regent Veyron, by witness of the Sun Eye line, Queen Maelira Cale, Theron Cale, the servant houses, and the court you deceived, your regency is ended." Veyron's lips curled. "And who judges me? The false king? The sleeping heir? The servant girl?" Mara walked toward him, gold eyes circling above her like fragments of dawn. "No," she said. "The child you thought no one would name." The eyes turned inward. At their center appeared a small boy of golden ash, wrapped in a plain white nursery cloth. Coriel. He did not look at Veyron first. He looked at Mara, then at the servants, then at Queen Maelira, who bowed her head in grief. Only then did the murdered child face the regent. Veyron's knees hit the floor again. The golden eyes spoke with Coriel's voice. "Remember me correctly." The last black sun mark in the court broke, and Lord Regent Veyron began to burn with every name he had tried to bury. The gold eyes circled Lord Regent Veyron like dawn, refusing to be shut out. He did not burn the way the court expected a condemned man to burn. There was no clean flame, no merciful ash, no quick scream. that would let the nobles call justice finished before supper. The light entered him slowly, opening every hidden memory he had buried beneath law, rank, and fear. On his sleeve appeared the first name, Coriel, then another, Mara Vey, then Queen Mylura Kyle, then Theron Kyle, then every servant family sent to the ash mines under the false charge of Sunai treason. Veyron clawed at the burning words. Stop this! Mara stood before him with her bleeding hands open. The dead sun bowl was gone, shattered into dozens of golden eyes above the court, but the sun-eye mark at her wrist remained awake. No, she said. You made the court watch me carry the bowl. Now you will carry what it saw. The golden eyes turned toward the sun throne. Queen Mylura stood beneath it, one hand on Theron's shoulder, the other gripping the broken stone where she had been chained. She was too weak to stand without help, but when Aurelian moved closer, she gave a small nod and allowed him to steady her arm. That one gesture broke something quiet in the hall, the false king supporting the buried queen, the true heir standing beside both of them, the servant witness holding the center. Veyron saw it too. His voice sharpened. You think this will hold? Theron has no army. Aurelian has no clean crown. Mylura is half dead, and this girl... His eyes cut to Mara. This girl is still a servant. Give the court 3 days, and they will turn her into a relic or a target. Aurelian stepped forward, sword still lowered. Then they will answer to me. Mara looked at him. He stopped, as if he felt the shape of the old mistake before it could form. Protection could become possession, if spoken carelessly. He lowered the sword completely. They will answer to law restored by witness, he corrected, not to my claim over her. The sun-eye shards glowed warmer. Mara's chest tightened, but she did not look away. Queen Mylura spoke next. No crown will be placed today. A ripple of fear moved through the nobles. Theron's hand closed around his mother's. I will not take a throne before I know the names buried under it. Aurelian nodded. And I will not keep one built over a living queen and a murdered child. The sun throne groaned. Its cracked base opened fully, releasing the last of the ash that had held Mylura prisoner. Beneath the seat, where black gold had hidden old blood, a small hollow appeared. Inside lay a plain white nursery cloth, burned at the edges, Coriel's cloth. Mara stepped toward it. The golden child of ash watched her, with solemn eyes. She lifted the cloth carefully. It weighed almost nothing. That made it harder to hold. He was servant-born, she said. He was not nameless. The servants at the doors bowed their heads. A laundry woman whispered first, Coriel, then the young guard. Coriel, then the kitchen boy. Coriel. One by one, the servants spoke the name. The nobles followed more slowly, some from shame, some from fear, some because the golden eyes above them waited, but they spoke it. Coriel. The ash child's face softened. He turned toward Queen Mylura. She bent her head, tears streaking through ash on her cheeks. I am sorry, she whispered. My son lived because you were taken. Coriel reached one small, glowing hand toward her, not accusing, not forgiving everything, only asking to be seen. Then his shape broke into gold sparks and sank into the white cloth in Mara's hands. The sun court breathed. Veyron collapsed fully to the floor. The names on his skin did not fade. Aurelian looked down at him. Lord Regent Veyron, your regency is ended. You will not be executed. Death would let you become a single villain, and let this court pretend it did not help you stand. Several nobles flinched. Good, Mara thought. Aurelian continued. You will stand before every servant house condemned after the nursery fire. You will name every order you gave, every silence you bought, every title granted from stolen blood, and every child buried under your law. If you lie, the sun-eye shards will open. The golden eyes lowered around Veyron like a cage of light. Veyron looked at Mara with hatred stripped bare. "You will regret leaving me alive." Mara held Coriel's cloth against her chest. "No, I will remember why you are." By dusk, the first decree was written on the cracked floor of the Sun Court because no one trusted the old ledgers yet. Queen Melira's survival was recorded. Theron Cale's preservation was recorded. Aurelian's crown binding and false grief were recorded. Mara Vey was cleared of treason and named Son I Witness. Coriel, servant-born child of the lower nursery, was named the murdered substitute heir whose death had carried the lie. The servant purge would be reopened. Every ash mine sentence under Sun-Eye guilt would be reviewed. No relic trial could be held without living witness from both noble and servant houses. Mara wrote the final line with a shaking hand. No throne shall stand on a child no one was allowed to name. The golden shards sealed the words. Night settled over the palace, but the Sun Court did not darken. The shattered bowl eyes floated high beneath the dome, small suns keeping watch over the cracked throne. Mara stood alone near the altar, where she had first been ordered to carry the bowl. Aurelian approached slowly. He had washed the blood from his face, but not all of it had come away. Without the crown, he looked less untouchable and more real, which frightened her in a different way. "You may leave the palace," he said. Mara looked at him. "And if I stay until my mother's name is restored in every record, then I will ask what you need. Not what the throne needs? No. Not what Theron's claim needs? No. Not what your guilt needs?" His answer came softer. "No." Only then did she let herself breathe. "I will stay until the names are restored," she said. "After that, I choose again." Aurelian bowed his head. "After that, you choose again." For a moment, neither moved. Then Mara held out the burned white cloth. Aurelian placed his hand beneath hers, not taking it, only helping her carry its weight. Above them, the golden eyes dimmed into a gentle watch. The Sun Court no longer smelled of incense and polished lies. It smelled of ash after rain.